Move approval.
Motion by Miguel,
Second.
second by Lynn. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? Motion carries. All right, item 4 is the consent and vote on the approval of the financial statement. Todd?
And just our normal financial statements, nothing extraordinary in them. Recommend approval.
Any questions for Todd? We have a motion.
Move approval.
Motion by Joe,
I'll second.
second by Connie. Any further discussion? All in favor, I say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Item 5 is the consent and vote on contracts and expenses. Todd?
Yeah, thank you. 2 items before you. The expenses are annual membership into the National Association of Councils. That's an annual membership, which we budgeted for in our work program. And then the contract, this is with MIPA to provide kind of the back end accounting for payroll, benefits, office space, that type of thing. And we'll get into more about that and further in the agenda. But just to give a little contract background, we've discussed this several times with you and with the MIPA board. They approved it earlier. It's a partnership program that EDA has, requires MIPA to hire one person. They're contracting with the MPO to cover the, like I said, the back end accounting and some of the other MIPA's needs as an organization. Next slide. So we'll provide that administrative support. I'll supervise the employee. We'll do the human resources, payroll, benefit management, auditing and accounting, and then also have some contract work at various times, depending on what's going on with MIPA to provide some broader expertise than that one individual would have and be reimbursed for that. Next slide. So the total contract for fiscal 23 is 61,000. You can see the breakdown in costs for those reimbursements. Again, non-personnel is the office space, computer supplies, that type of stuff, staff support, the audit, and then the administrative support for managing the employees. Next slide. Be happy to answer any questions. As I mentioned, MIPA has approved this. We would recommend approval. EDA also has reviewed this and is in agreement with it.
Thanks, Todd. Any questions for Todd on this?
Move approval.
Second by Tom. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? Motion carries. All right, item 5, movement is to public comment on MPO actions. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that.
No.
We'll move on then to item 7. That's a presentation on the Central Iowa Waterworks. Allison.
Yes, thank you. We've invited Ted Corrigan back to give us an update on how far Central Iowa Waterworks has come and what they're up to next. And so, Ted, if you have any issues with your technology, do let us know, but the floor is all yours.
Alrighty, thanks, Allison. I'm going to share my screen here if I can. I've got some slides. I'm going to be pretty efficient with this, though. Can you see those slides, first of all?
We can't hear in the room yet, but they're working on it. Hang on. Ted.
I can see them.
Zoom participants may be able to yet, but we can't see them here. There we go. Now we can see them.
Okay. I'm going to be pretty efficient with some of this because I know many of you are already familiar with the concept and you're interested in more of an update. But we have been working on this concept of Central Iowa Waterworks for some time. Des Moines Waterworks has been the regional provider for many years, starting in 1934 with Urbandale. We provide historically up to 80% of the drinking water in the metro. After the floods in '93, all the communities in the metro came together basically and agreed to expand the system, contributed capital. We built a number of facilities until we have what today is a pretty robust system. We've got 3 drinking water treatment plants. We've got a network of large diameter water mains that connect to all those plants and deliver water to all of the communities who are wholesale customers of Des Moines. But that network, the current network, is governed by the Des Moines Waterworks Board. Historically, there's been a lot of interest. I mean, the suburbs have contributed what in today's dollars would be hundreds of millions of dollars. They use 60% of the water produced by this regional system. And so we've been working on this concept. And really, it's been primarily the 3 board managed utilities who have been working to develop this concept. A couple of years ago, it's probably 4 years ago now, we did have a dozen or so open meetings. Communities from across the metro came together, provided input, and got a lot of feedback. But more recently here in the last couple of years, it's been the 3 board managed utilities, Des Moines, West Des Moines, and Urbandale, who came together and developed a framework within which we believe a regional governance system for drinking water in central Iowa can be developed. And we published a document in November. In December and January, those 3 water boards in Des Moines, West Des Moines, and Urbandale passed a resolution saying they wanted to create a 28E agreement that would allow the formation of Central Iowa Waterworks. And they invited all of the communities that have been involved to date to pass a similar resolution. This is a list of all of the communities that were involved. Primarily, this is wholesale customers, existing wholesale customers of Des Moines Waterworks, plus Grimes. Grimes has been involved right from the beginning in the planning. Asked those communities to pass a similar resolution if they were interested in participation. That happened about the end of the year. And to date, all of the communities, I'm not sure about Polk City yet. I think they were going to consider it very recently. I haven't heard if they passed a resolution of participation. All the communities or water agencies that are current wholesale customers of Des Moines Waterworks, with the exception of the Warren Rural Water District, have now passed a resolution indicating that they want to be part of the discussion in terms of developing this regional governance entity. And so in February, at the end of February, we actually distributed a draft 28E to all of these communities and asked them to give that a review and plan to provide some context or feedback perspective here in May. And we're actually going to begin meeting in small groups with some of those communities tomorrow, the first one. And we've got a series of meetings scheduled just to get initial feedback. Our plan is to gather that initial feedback, consolidate that, and then share that with everyone and begin the process of, I guess you'd probably call it negotiating or finalizing that agreement here through the summer. So our hope is that by the end of the third quarter, we will have an agreement in place that communities could consider entering into with the rest of the metro area to form this regional governance entity. I think that's a pretty aggressive schedule, but I think it's one that's doable if we can stay on the path that we're on. And we're hopeful that by the beginning of next year, we would be able to stand up this regional governance entity and begin planning and governing the drinking water supply system collaboratively across the Des Moines metro area. That's an update on kind of where the process is. I'd be happy to share some more specifics on the vision for Central Iowa if the group is interested in that. I know many of you are already familiar, but you can give me a little direction, Mayor, if you think that that would be appropriate or whether you have what you need at this point.
All right. Thank you, Ted. Any questions for Ted on this right now?
I just got a quick one, Bob. Ted, this is Tom Hawkinsmith. You guys, I know you were just at our board staff workshop, and appreciate the work that you've all put into this, everybody. And I think I can speak for our board that we're totally supportive of the initiative and think it's great for the region. I can't recall, refresh my memory, Ted, we were going to pass a resolution in support, but we wouldn't, I mean, as unincorporated Polk County, the 4 Mile Township, the current areas you currently serve, the old Southeast Polk Rural Water District, do we need a 28E also? formally, or how did we leave that?
The water supply system in unincorporated Polk County has actually been deeded to Des Moines Waterworks. And so there would not be a need for there to be a 2080 agreement between Central Iowa Waterworks and Polk County. The relationship between Central Iowa and Des Moines Waterworks will cover those unincorporated areas, and we will serve them just like they were another neighborhood in Des Moines. We'll take care of that.
Okay. Okay. What do you need us to do, Ted, from a county standpoint? Anything at all?
You know, passage of the resolution of support, we're very pleased to hear consideration of that, and we would welcome that. Otherwise, from a county supervisor perspective, I don't think there's more that we need at this point in time.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything further? Any other questions for Ted?
Good work, Ted, and the rest of you, Mayor, and Scott, I know you're on the board, and Tom Haddon's here, but I would just appreciate everybody working together to come up with a solution. It's been a long time coming, so thanks to everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ted. Appreciate the update.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on then would be item 8. That's the report and vote on the federal fiscal year 26 surface transportation block grant program funding recommendation. Zach?
Yes, thank you. The funding subcommittee has met and developed the recommendation for funding. We got our target from Iowa DOT back in probably early March. And this year we have a little over $15 million in STBG funding to award. So we're excited to hear that. It's about, I don't know, $1.8 million more than what we have received in past years. So that was good news. Unfortunately, in 2026, we also have requests over 32 million. So it was a difficult year for the funding subcommittee. They had to make some tough choices, but overall, I think they're very happy with the recommendation that we're going to present today. Next slide. So I'll just, this list is included in your agenda packet on page 10, but I will run through each of these as well. So for the system capacity category, Ankeny, their first West First Street widening project received, or is recommended to receive, 1.1 million. The Clive Interstate 35, Interstate 80, Highway 6 interchange is recommended to approve or to receive $1 million. Grimes Southeast 37th Street is recommended to get 500,000. Waukesha Alice's Road project is recommended to get 750,000, and then finally West Des Moines Millsett Parkway reconstruction is recommended to get 1.1 million. Next slide. In the major reconstruction or replacement category, Altoona for their 8th Street reconstruction is recommended to get 750,000. Des Moines Douglas Avenue corridor project is recommended to get 2.2 million. Polk County's Northeast 23rd Avenue project, 1.5 million. And Windsor Heights 73rd Street reconstruction, 750,000. In the system optimization category, we only had one project submitted. That was from the city of Des Moines for their intelligent transportation system upgrade. It's phase 6 of that project, and they're recommended to receive 1.5 million. We had 3 bridge projects that were submitted. 2 of them are recommended to receive funding. The Des Moines University Avenue Bridge project, 1.7 million, and then Polk County's Bridge 6668 replacement, 500,000. Transit project start submit a project for bus replacements and the B-cycle station replacements. They're recommended to receive 1.4 million, and then the MPO will receive 95,000 for their TMA program. So as far as how this kind of lines out with our targets we've set in our long range plan, you can see that for the most part, we're pretty close to meeting all of these targets. I will say that probably for the first time, we did hit our maximum target on the system capacity category. So we are awarding more funding to the other categories this year. Major reconstruction replacement fell into the range that we have set for our goal on that. System optimization is a little bit under this year. That's really just due to the fact that there was only the one project submitted, and with the additional funding, that's giving more funding to other categories. That was a little bit lower, but there really wasn't any concern from the funding subcommittee on that matter. Similar situation with the bridge program, a little bit under what our goal is for that, but again, not any major concerns from the funding subcommittee. And then transit was right at what our target is, just slightly under it. Again, I think that just has more to do with our increase in funding and all the projects that we had this year to award funding to. In addition to that, there was some discussion at the funding subcommittee as well as the exec committee about just taking another look at the scoring system, making sure that our scores are aligning more closely with what we're trying to award in funding. So over the next few months, staff will be taking a look at the scoring system, seeing if there's any tweaks that we can make to it. At this point, we're not committing to any changes, but we are committing to looking at it and seeing if there's anything else we can do to tweak it and just kind of make it come more in line with the way we're awarding funding over the past few years. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions. Otherwise, this item is before you for your approval.
Great, thank you, Zach. Thanks for the update and summary. Any questions for Zach on this?
So Zach, as we talk about the scoring, I probably need to clarify some of the statements that were made because at the executive meeting, I wasn't targeting any of specific projects, especially the one in West Point that scored 26. This was about the perception of scoring as one scores 99 and gets $0 and one scores 26. Not to say that West Des Moines isn't deserving of that. I'm fully supportive of it. But I do think as staff looks at it, you need to come back with some different recommendations because one scoring 99, one scoring 26. Hopefully next year we don't see that. So I'm hoping in the next few months, Mr. Chair, that we will get maybe a good look at that, whether it be at the exec or policy level, that we can take a look at that.
I think we will at both, frankly. I mean, I think there will be some robust discussion. And again, as we had the discussion at exec, the scoring system is not, it doesn't correlate directly as everybody's admitted and discussed in the past. And, but still, it's something that I think is part of my metrics as far as looking at what should be awarded. But still, at the end of the day, there's also other factors that go into it, and among those are just it's frankly some rough justice among the different jurisdictions of what funds should receive. So, but that doesn't mean to say that we can't improve our processes. It's always good to keep looking at our processes. So yes, we will have that discussion and bring it back to the exec and to policy for some further review and discussion. So
Appreciate that. I'll move that item.
all right, motion by Joe,
Second.
second by Tom. Any further discussion?
Just real quick, Mayor, for the record,
Yes.
I think the staff had already done the math on the environmental justice, what that percentage was.
Zach, you have that?
Yes, I believe it was 54%, I believe.
The goal was,
I don't think there was a second.
I thought there was.
Make sure we were talking that way.
Yes, yeah. Good point, Scott. Thank you. All right, motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? That motion carries. All right, thank you. Item 9 then would be the report and vote on the federal fiscal year 26 surface transportation block grant set aside program funding recommendation. Aspen?
Thank you. We just had 4 applications submitted for TAP projects this year, and each one of them was a trails project. And our funding subcommittee was able to award every project funding. So we have Ankeny's Orelabor Gateway Trail, Des Moines Central Place Levee Trail Phase 2, Polk County's Neil Smith and High Trestle Trail connection through Polk City, and West Des Moines Raccoon River East Pedestrian Bridge. Unless anyone has any questions or clarifications for me, I would go ahead and recommend this for approval.
Aspen, any questions for Aspen on this item? Is there a motion?
move to approve.
Motion by Tom,
Second.
second by Len. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? That motion carries. Item 10 is report and vote on the priority project list for the Greater Des Moines Partnership DC trip. Zach?
Yes, thank you. At the funding subcommittee's last meeting, they did make a recommendation to move the projects that had been submitted for the DC trip list forward. At the executive committee, there was some discussion about a couple of the projects that were submitted, two being from Indianola, and the decision was made to pull those off the list because Indianola is not in the MPO planning area, and this list is being submitted as an MPO priority project list. So the two Indianola projects have been removed from the list. The full list is available in the agenda packet on page 14. Other than that, the only other change has been made since exec is that we were contacted by HERDA, and they requested that we add their intermodal facility and maintenance facility in Waukee to the list. So we have added that project to the list. You'll see that in there. The request is for $12.5 million. And it is to construct that maintenance intermodal facility there in Waukee. It'll also provide some options for bus transfers for Jefferson lines and Burlington Trailways, and that's the intermodal piece of that project. Other than that, the other changes are highlighted in red. These are the same changes that we had in the agenda back in February when we first introduced it to you. So there are no additional changes other than the Indianola projects coming out and the HERDA project coming onto the list. This is before you for your approval. I'd be happy to take any questions. I would just throw out a quick reminder that this list is different than the community funded projects, which are the earmarks, which we'll talk about later in the agenda, but they are two separate things, just for clarification.
Thank you, Zach. Any questions for Zach on this item?
I'll move approval.
Legato,
Second.
was that? Wait a second, I'm sorry.
Oh, it was me from Bondurant, Marquita.
Thank you, Marquita. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? Any abstentions? That motion carries. Item 11 is report and vote on the federal fiscal year 2019-23 passenger transportation plan amendment. Allison.
Thank you. So we do have a request submitted by DART staff. This is just a reallocation of funds that they get through the Federal Transit Administration, but it does remove things from contracted demand response service to paratransit bus replacements for fiscal years 21, 22, and 23. And a lot of this has to do with the shakeups that they're making during the pandemic and then going forward from there. There is no change in dollar amounts, as you'll see on the next slide. And these are, again, FTA 5310 funds that are specifically for the aging and disabled populations. So staff does recommend approval of this. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them at this time.
Allison, any questions?
Move approval.
Motion got it.
Second.
By Tom. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? That carries. Item 12 is the report and vote on the fiscal year 22 to 25 transportation improvement program amendments. Aspen.
Thank you. We have 11 amendments to review that were submitted by DART for the 2022 TIP. 2 projects will be reducing funds, 6 projects will be increasing funds, and then 3 projects are being added. And so I'll just cycle through the next 11 slides and feel free to chime in if there's any that you want to make a comment on, but otherwise these are in your packets as well for you to review. And once as we get to the end, I'll go ahead and recommend those for approval.
Okay. All right, those will be 11. Any questions for Aspen on this side? So move. Motion by Tom. Second by Joe. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any Any opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? Motion carries. All right, that's the end of our voting items. Item 13 is a report on the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program. Dylan?
Yeah, I think we need to back up one.
Sorry, you're up. I missed you. Report on the notice of funds availability for the hazard mitigation grant program. Sorry about that, Allison. Go ahead.
You're fine, you're fine. Just maybe double check. You can go to the next slide. So many of you are on the Polk County Emergency Management DLAN list, but just in case, we wanted to let people know that there is a hazard mitigation grant program, NOFA out there right now for the in response to the December 2021 derecho. There are priority project types that they're looking at specifically about this, but these are just priorities. You can apply for other hazard mitigation projects as well. The caveat being, those projects do need to be in a approved hazard mitigation plan. So for most of you on the call, that's a Polk County Emergency Management who runs that. And then for the other counties, emergency management departments there, to make an amendment to include some sort of project that you might want to submit for. It's very easy. Just reach out to myself or their staff directly. Just a reminder that these programs are cost share of 75% federal and then 25% non-federal, with local being 15. The applications are due in December 2022 at the end of this year, but there is a notice of intent for April 30th. So if your city is starting to think about this, I know we're coming up on that date already. Please do reach out to either myself or emergency management so we can start making those amendments and put an application together for you. If you have any questions, I'll take them at this time.
Thank you, Allison. Any questions for Allison? All right, thank you. Now it's item 14 of the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program.
Okay, thank you. Yes, there's a new funding program from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. It's starting to come out, and this is one of several new programs that is rolling out for the next several months. This one in particular is for to make safe streets Vision Zero type of planning, and there's really three things that can be used for. It can be used to create a Vision Zero plan or a safety plan, to do work based on a plan that already exists to develop projects, so the engineering or the planning work to develop projects, or if you have those two things already, to actually implement projects for that. The notice of funding availability will be out in May, so this is really just a heads up. There's going to be $6 billion over 5 years on this program. There's more information on page 23 of the agenda packet. As we learn more, we'll share this with our member communities, but just wanted to put this on everyone's radar that this is coming out soon.
Dylan, any questions? All right, moving on then to item 15, and that is the fiscal year 23 community project funding guidelines.
Yes, there was another funding opportunity that just closed in late March. Congress announced, or at least the House announced, that they were going to do another round of appropriations, or in the next round of appropriations, community project funding, otherwise referred to as earmarks. Those applications were due this last Monday on the 18th. MPO staff was asked to provide letters for 5 projects, and those are up there on the screen. So the City of Ankeny's Northeast Delaware Avenue project, 3 projects from the City of Des Moines, as well as Icon Water Trails project. As Zach mentioned a few minutes ago with the priority project list, the DC list, I think there probably needs to be some sort of discussion here in the coming months of what we do with these 2 things. Previously, the DC trip list was the list people needed to be on in order to submit projects for earmarks, and then earmarks went away for a decade, and so that list became a little bit different. But now that they're back, and they seem to be back at least for the next little while, I think that's probably something we need to look at. You know, in this list of 5 projects, Northeast Delaware Avenue was the only one that was on that list already. So just something that, again, we might want to think about over the next couple of months. We haven't given this a lot of thought as staff, have recommendations yet, but it's something we'll come back with. And there might be other projects that submitted to that we're just not aware of. On Representative Axley's website, these will all be listed here eventually as part of their transparency effort, but right now those aren't up there yet. So this is all we know of for now.
Okay.
Did you get an indication when you might hear about these?
In terms of the funding, that won't probably happen until later this fall when the appropriations bill will be passed. But last year anyway, each representative is able to submit up to 15 projects that they receive. And so they will announce what those 15 projects are at some point here in the coming months. So once we know that, we'll share that with everybody too. So just because projects were submitted doesn't mean they'll be part of that 15 that were submitted forward. The 15 is 5 more than last year. Last year, they were only able to submit 10 forward into the appropriations process. So we'll let you know when we hear more.
So these are 15 on Congresswoman Axe's.
Correct. So from her whole district, she can only submit 15 forward. And that's not just transportation projects, that's across everything.
Then they have to compete at a national
Right,
level.
exactly.
So you compete in the congressional district and then the national level.
Correct. So last year, for example, of the 10 projects that Representative Axley put forward, there were 3 transportation projects from our metro area. Just to give a frame of reference there.
So is this it for this year then, or will it be the subsequent rounds?
They'll, in theory, at least as long as Democrats are in charge of the House, I assume they'll continue to do this. Once there's a big change in power, that'll probably be revisited.
Any other questions, comments? Thanks, Dylan. Then item 16 is a report on the Purple Heart Highway. Todd?
Yeah, thank you. DOT is wrapping up their stakeholder meetings. They met with Altoona, Carlisle, Norwalk, Pleasant Hill, West Des Moines in the partnership. They've also met with Iowa State recently. They're preparing their report. That probably won't be done for a little while, but they're going to pull out kind of a summary document that we can take with us on the DC trip with some preliminary findings. So Stu Anderson and Michael DeVoe are working on that from the DOT, and we'll work with staff at the MPO to pull that together, and we'll have that ready to go for the partnership trip on the issues that, the same ones that we all, we've talked about for a long time. The farm industry wanting to continue to use the corridor. How do we handle the increased weights as an interstate? The safety aspects, those type of things. So we'll work with the DOT to get that pulled together and have it available for meetings during the DC trip. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Todd. Question? And item 17 is a report on the water trips.
Yeah, thank you. This will be a little longer discussion. We did have the letting at the end of March. We received one bid, approximately 73 million. It was quite a bit over where we wanted to be at. We rejected that bid. DOT and Federal Highway concurred with that. We have set up a meeting with the bidder to talk about, kind of what the reasons were for the cost in their bid, and determine what we could do differently in the bid package. There's things with some of the construction techniques, the dewatering techniques, the rock, a few different things that we're looking at, and it won't get us all the way there, I don't think, but I think we can narrow that gap. And so we met with Federal Highway and DOT, and the city and county and Icon Water Trails were on there last week to discuss this and kind of develop a plan to go forward. At that point, we decided that, we'd put together a new bid package and bid it later this summer, with the idea that we could get probably at least some of the projects under contract, say one or more of the park locations, get those going, and that would meet our September 30th deadline. And then if need be, we could work on rebidding the dam or what have you that was left over later this fall. Subsequently, yesterday afternoon, I got an email from Paul LaFleur at Federal Highway, who's our point of contact for the project, and I believe is on this call or on the meeting here, that Federal Highway wants us to meet a June 30th deadline for getting things under contract. And that's going to be a big lift to get there. We've met the deadlines for design and environmental. We got everything in the bid package put together. It's just sort of a confluence of events where we're not getting a bid that we we can really work with, and, you know, communities have seen that as well, with all the work that came out with the infrastructure package. It's a unique project, labor shortages, supply chain issues. It's resulting in a bit higher than we can really work with. So we're going to meet, as I said, on the 25th with the bidder to talk about the differences between what they bid and what we were estimating, put together a plan on how we could move this forward Monday afternoon, Tuesday, and then get back together with Federal Highway, DOT, and our project partners on Wednesday afternoon to see how we get this project moving forward and what we can do to get there. So we'll keep you posted on that. There's going to be a lot of work to be done in the next couple of weeks, but we'll keep chopping wood at it. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Todd?
Todd, are they able to, are we able to break up the bids and still have it under contract by June 30th? Is that still going to be possible? And do we need to meet a certain threshold of the amount we're going to spend?
We can break up the bids, but we do, according to Paul's email yesterday, we need to have at least the $25 million build grant and the local match under contract by June 30th, which again will be, the parks alone won't make that. So you're back to the dam modification project. And that's where our highest costs are. So not that the park projects don't have some costs that we think are out of line with where they should be. So that's part of what we'll look at Monday and get an idea where we're at Tuesday.
So you're saying we are able to bid out the parks portion of it, get that under contract, but not necessarily the dam portion of it? That doesn't need to be completed to fulfill the
No.
grant?
To meet federal highways requirements, we have to have under contract by June 30th, basically $31.5 million. That's the build grant plus the local match. To get to that number, you're really looking at the dam modification project. The parks projects, the 3 park projects won't get you to that amount. So we got to figure out how we get there and what can be done to get there. And that's part of the discussion we'll have Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
All right, thank you.
All right, Scott, you have something?
Just a cautionary note that we're gonna want to know where all the finances are gonna land before we commit to anything, because otherwise we might have to pay back, right? 25 million, so I wouldn't think about solving part of it now without understanding that risk. We might have to pay back the grant.
Right. No, that's part of the calculation as well. We do have the local funding is there for the project. But yeah, no, we definitely don't want to spend money and have to pay it back, Scott.
But that only happens if we don't complete all of the project that was set out, or just the dam part? That's
No,
not.
it's all the project. It's all, you know, the dam and the parks. That's considered all part of the build grant agreement.
Okay. Yeah, that's great clarification. Thank you.
Yep.
So at what point do we decide we're not able to do this or we are able to do this?
Well, it sounds like June 30th.
When does that happen?
It will happen in the next probably couple weeks. I mean, we've got to we'll have the discussions next week to see what plan we can come up with on costs, putting a new bid package together. Can we get it done in the time we need to get it out for bid and get a bid back to meet Federal Highways timeline? And we'll see how that goes in early next week. And by Wednesday, we should have a better idea of where we're at on that and then what our next steps are.
you'll be in contact before the next exec
Yes.
and meeting with all of us.
Certainly.
Thank you.
All right, anything further on that? All right, thanks, Todd.
Mhm.
Item 18, that would be an update on the Economic Development District.
Sure. And you're all, I'm sure, tired of seeing this graphic, so this should be the last time you see it. But we've completed all the 4 phases of developing the Economic Development District. The contract you approved earlier was basically the last step. We received approval from EDA is that last step, and the partnership program was approved earlier this month. So we're all set. Next slide. As I mentioned, Ward, the partnership program, EDA staff really likes our how we put together our package. We've gotten the signatures, received the notice of investment from Grassley's office on April 11th. It's a 3-year grant for a total of $210,000, $70,000 annually to match the $70,000 in local funds. Next slide. Now, these are the jurisdictions that have became a member of MIPA as of earlier this month. There's Ames. We had a recent conversation with the city of Ames. I believe they will join us. It isn't official yet, but they're strongly looking at it now. Next slide. A couple other communities are as well. We posted, as I mentioned, we posted the application for hiring staff. We had 3 finalists, interviewed those, had it reviewed by the hiring committee. We have hired, or MIPA has hired, a gentleman by the name of Caleb Knutson, was a planner in the city of Marshalltown. He will be starting next Monday. We will transition from the current interim board of directors to the full-time board of directors beginning this month and into May. That will happen, and update the SEDS as needed. Next slide. They will also have an executive committee, somewhat similar to what the MPO is. This will be kind of the working committee that will meet more often. And then the full board will meet a couple times a year. This group will meet 6 times per year to approve expenses or take any action that needs to be kind of on the operations side of things. I think that was the last slide. Yep. Be happy to answer any questions.
Todd, how is the board made up?
The communities decided who they wanted to appoint to that. Some were economic development directors from different communities. Others
Is there
are
any electives on there?
oof.
I think my understanding is that we've only received submittals from 14 of those 40-some communities so far. So I'm not sure if we know the full makeup of it yet.
Yeah, I don't think we have the interim board. There weren't maybe 1 or 2 electeds, but the committees or the communities can decide who their representative is.
Yeah, they didn't have to be an election.
No, I understand. I just wondered if there was any electives on the board or going to be part of it or have any type of input. Now, will we get reports on this after each meeting, or how is that going to work?
I'm guessing you will, Joe. Yeah, they haven't really set up that operational side of things yet, but I would assume they would have minutes that would be sent out to the communities. We'll recommend that anyway.
I mean, it still falls under the umbrella of the MPO, correct?
No, MIPA is a separate organization. We're just providing some staffing support under a contract.
Okay.
So does Zering have equal vote as Des Moines does?
Yes,
Yeah.
but operationally, sorry, Andrew, I'll jump in. Operationally, they will work much differently. MIPO doesn't actually receive any funding to distribute to communities. The only vote will be to structure the organization and move it forward, but really what MIP is gonna do is help communities apply to other organizations for funding. So MIPA might help Zering apply to IEDA for an application, and IEDA will decide if that application is approved or not. The board itself won't be involved in that process.
And how much?
So this is a board of 40-some people?
The full board, which will meet once a year to approve the budget, set rates, that sort of thing. The executive committee is where a lot of the day-to-day operations will meet, and that is a much smaller board, which is
Well,
three.
it couldn't be much larger.
Sorry, what?
Couldn't be much larger, we know that, so.
Right.
So how much staff time from the MPO organization is this going to take, Todd?
We have hired somebody, right?
Yeah,
We're hiring someone, the staff time from the MPO would basically be on an ongoing basis would be a little bit of my time, some of Tracy's time to process payroll and do some supervision, which we're getting reimbursed for. There could be under the contract with the MPO where they have a planning project they need some expertise on, where they would contract and pay for some staff time, but it's not a lot of hours. Dylan, you might have a better handle on that.
I think it was earlier in the agenda when we approved it. I think it had a number, and I don't remember what the exact hours were, but it's minimum. Yeah, it's pretty good.
And so this director has 40-some bosses?
Yep,
Similar to the MPO.
similar to the MPO. And it's similar to how a lot of the other EDDs are set up as well.
Would it be appropriate to get reports from them though on grant applications and success rates? Because it feels
Sure.
like
Yeah, we can do that. I'm sure they would do that. And we can help facilitate that.
just for this group, we've already tried and failed, one grant. So I think it's good to know community-wide, region-wide, how successful we're being. Thank you.
Yep.
So we do that quarterly then, Todd?
Yeah, we can do that quarterly.
That would be beneficial, I think, for all of us.
All right, anything further on that?
Mr. Chairman, if I could, this is Supervisor Hawkinsmith, Polk County.
Go ahead,
Can you
Tom.
hear me? Yeah,
Yeah,
I
go
just,
ahead, go ahead.
this is just more of a comment and for Todd and for Bob, you in the future as we move ahead. And the MPO Gunner came and made a presentation to our board a number of months ago on this and economic development initiative. And I listened intently, and I've been listening the last few meetings about what we're doing here, and I accepted and supported the county's contribution because I believe it was a small amount, only around $5,000, based on the idea that this group was going to give us better opportunities at federal funding for economic development activities. But I shared with Gunner then and my colleagues then, and I still strongly believe that, I get really concerned when we get out of our lane. Folks, what drives economic development is transportation infrastructure and utility infrastructure. That's what drives economic development. And frankly, Polk County, we currently contribute $250,000 every year to the Greater Des Moines Partnership for economic development opportunities. That's the only way I can justify as an elected official not having an economic development department, because the Greater Des Moines Partnership is our economic development department. And I know other jurisdictions put money in the partnership for the representation as far as economic development goes. They do a great job, but I'm going to be adamant, and I realize I'm only one vote. I'm going to be adamant we stay in our lane here as we move ahead with this initiative. Our lane is transportation infrastructure, which drives economic development more than anything does. So I'm going to be adamant about that as we move ahead and continue. I mean, our commitment for money wise went to the staff person, and I understood that at the time, but I said then, and I'll continue to say that we need to stay in our lane.
Understood, Tom, but again, the MPO is not paying for the staff person.
Well, the jurisdictions are paying for it though, Bob. All of our jurisdictions contributed to this. I know we did. I don't know if you guys, any of the cities did, but Gunner came and made a presentation to us and we're throwing money at it. And the staff's hiring the MPO is going to supervise them and hire them. All I'm saying is, Bob, I'm okay with that structure so far. But as we move into the future, if this grows into something that it wasn't intended to be and wasn't presented to be, because that's the way sometimes it works, an inch here, an inch there, an inch there. And the next thing you know, we're recreating the Greater Des Moines Partnership and doing economic development all over the region instead of doing transportation infrastructure. That's my concern. I don't, like I said, we're not voting on anything today. I'm just sharing with you my opinion, and you can take it or leave it. Long term, I think that's not our shouldn't be our mission.
Understood. All right. Thank you, Tom. Any other comments, questions? All right, we will move on. Item 19 is an update on the Transworld Facility. Zach?
Thank you. Pretty short update here. As I mentioned last month, we are wrapping up this project. We're very close to closing out the build grant. We're still expecting one more reimbursement request from Des Moines Industrial. Once they submit that to us, we'll submit that right away, and then we can move forward with the closeout. We're working to submit our final quarterly report to the FRA, which is due on April 30th. We're putting a few finishing touches on that, and we'll be sending that off to them next week. And as I mentioned, once we get that final reimbursement request from Des Moines Industrial, we'll be able to submit that and then go through the closeout process. But we're anticipating that we'll be able to close out the Transworld Facility build grant probably sometime in May. Next slide. As far as the closeout on the RLG funding goes, if you recall, that was the 1.7 million we received from the Iowa DOT. We are just about to close that out as well. We had a site visit where the DOT came down to Des Moines and walked the site on April 13th. They had a couple of track inspectors who walked the track, everything checked out. We signed off on it. I am expecting to receive some information from them the next few days to tell us what we have to do to do the final closeout and receive our $170,000 that they've held in retainage over the course of the project. So once I have heard from them, we'll be able to receive that money and cut a check to Des Moines Industrial for the final $170,000 of that 1.7 million. As far as the inspection went, the track inspectors did say it was some of the best track that they have ever seen. So that was good news. I think I may have one more slide here. Yep, as I mentioned, project closeout, we're anticipating that that'll happen sometime in May for both the build grant and the RLG grant. And then they are waiting for their formal certificate of occupancy from the city. They need to get their landscaping in. Again, we're anticipating that'll be sometime in May, maybe early June. So that's all I have for an update on Transworld Facility. We did have our executive committee meeting there in April. It was really great to see everybody there. They did some tours, so I know several members of the executive committee were able to go on the tour and get some more information that way. So unless anybody else has anything else they'd like to share from that experience, that's all I have on this update.
All right, thanks, Zach. Any questions for Zach?
Is there some sort of ribbon cutting planned or anything like that, Zach?
I know that Paul has been talking about doing a ribbon cutting. I have not heard anything recently about what their plans for a date on that ribbon cutting are, but that's certainly something I can follow up with Paul on.
We also talked about maybe having a speaker policy maybe there too. If we want to get the full policy.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
Have we heard anything about any contracts or anybody going to use the facility coming forward at this point? I know we had some rebar delivered. That was a discussion at our last meeting.
Yeah, and talking with Paul before the executive committee meeting, they have a lot of irons in the fire. They have a lot of meetings. He's expecting that sometime in the next few months, they're going to start filling up that warehouse. it's business dealings. He didn't want to share a lot of details with me, but he felt pretty confident that in the next few months, they're going to have a full warehouse.
He thought one person was gonna take the whole thing, so when we talked to him Wednesday, so at that point in time, well, we're gonna need more space. And they have another pad that it would be able to build another portion of it, but there was one particular company that's looking at taking the whole thing.
Wonderful.
We know how fast railroads move, so.
Yeah.
All right, so that was a good success. So that's a great success. Good job. All right, moving on then, item 20, and that's the legislative update.
Thank you. A couple updates on the national side of things. Last month, the Congress approved an appropriations bill. We've been in a continuing resolution for a little while, but they finally approved that. The key thing with that is that unlocked a lot of the funding that was included in the infrastructure bill that had been passed at the end of last year. So as Zach mentioned earlier, our SDBG funds went up because of that appropriations bill being passed. There's a lot of other funding programs that are coming out. That kind of leads into the next one. Now that that appropriations bill has been passed, a lot of guidance and notice of funding opportunities and things like that are starting to come out for a lot of those programs. We will be sending out in the post-meeting email a list of, at least from the USDOT side of things, all of the various programs that are coming out over the next several months, just so your communities can start looking at those, getting familiar with them. It's just more of just a dates of when to start looking for those rather than a lot of detail, but it should give you some guidance on that. And then one other update, last week at the executive committee meeting, I mentioned that there was a deal in the Senate, a bipartisan deal to advance $10 billion for supplemental COVID funds. The key thing with that is it would loosen some flexibility for local governments to use those funds on transportation and infrastructure. However, that stalled in the Senate. Apparently there was on the Republican side of things, they wanted something else in return, and Democrats weren't willing to do that, so it just kind of fizzled out. I'm not sure if it'll be picked back up or if it's totally dead, but for now, nothing's happening with that. So just a quick update there.
All right. Thanks, Dylan. Any questions? Great. Item 21, upcoming events. Allison?
That's me again. Yep. First up is next week already. It's the Be on the Bus from HRDA. They're focusing on healthcare on the move this year, barriers to healthcare, and the connections between transportation and health equity and healthcare. You can go on to the next one. So just today, we finalized a webinar hosted in June regarding leveraging some of the IIJA funds that we keep hearing about, the EV, carbon reduction, and other newer programs that are creating a lot of unanswered questions. And so we've invited Beth Osborne, the Director of Transportation for America, to join us to kind of walk us through some of these new programs and how cities can kind of think outside the box in it when applying for these. So that will be June 2nd at 11 a.m. And there are continuing education credits for planners. And we'll have that link in the packet as well. Next. And then this one, Growing Transportation Mobility for All, is the MASTO conference happening here in Iowa, not till July when it's nice and hot, but it will be right up the street from the MPO at the event center. And now you cannot get early bird rates, it looks like, but you can see there, masto2022.com if you are interested in that. And I believe that's all for me. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Allison. Any questions? All right, item 23, or excuse me, item 22, other items of interest of committee. Todd, I know you had one.
Yeah, thanks. This is a bit of a personal one. Many of you know, some of the newer folks might not know, but almost 10 years ago, I had a liver transplant. The second one I've actually had, and one 20 years ago as well. April is National Donate Life Month. Just to make you aware of organ donation. If you'd like more information, donatelife.net is the place to go to find out all sorts of great information about organ donation. Thanks.
Thanks, Todd. Any other items of interest? All right. We hearing none then. Our next meeting date is May 19th at 4 o'clock. And we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.